Okay, if I can ask first about the economy, and obviously a lot of talk today about Gordon Brown bailing out banks with this £50 billion package. Is that appropriate for a government to be doing that?
Well, it's not a bailout, and it's not actually a government package. It's the Bank of England that have led on this and spoke to us over the weekend about it. I spoke to George Osborne over the weekend about it. Look, I think it is the right thing to do because it's in everybody's interest to get the money markets moving again. It's in no one's interest if banks aren't lending to each other and if they aren't lending to business and if they aren't lending for development and they're not lending to individuals. And so getting the system moving again is right. What we were looking very carefully for is to make sure that this isn't a bailout because the banks must accept a discount on the bonds that they post with the Bank of England. They must also pay a fee for this service. And it shouldn't, if banks are seriously in trouble, this is not a way of bailing them out. There are separate procedures for that. So we were asking very tough questions to make sure that this is sensible support and not a bailout.
But should it have come to this? I mean, should the government have allowed it to come to this?
Well, clearly there have been failures in terms of allowing the credit boom to run out of control. And we have to ask some serious questions about, are the capital adequacy rules about what banks can lend, are they sufficient, and do we need to revisit them? Do we need to include asset prices when we look at inflation? There are a number of questions we need to ask about the past, but we need to deal with the issue at the present, which is to try and ease the credit crunch, to get the money markets moving again, and that's why we support the steps that have been taken today.
And at the same time, we have Gordon Brown being attacked from his own party over the scrapping of the 10p income tax rate. Is this the beginning of the end for him? Do you expect him to be around when the next general election's called?
Well, obviously I'm on to my second Labour leader already, so this adds to the variety of life. I think the 10p tax issue, though, is a very, very serious moment for this government because they have deliberately targeted 5.3 million of the lowest paid people in our country, and they are hitting them with a tax rise at a time when their grocery bills are going up, when it's costing them more to fill up the car, when their rent's probably going up, when their mortgage may well be going up. This is a group of people that find it difficult to make ends meet anyway. And so this is a really serious problem for this government, and we're saying very clearly that we're going to ask them to stop and think again. We will use what power we have in Parliament to try and put forward amendments to say that they've got to stop and think about this and try and find some way of helping those 5.3 million people. And if the government is going to dig its heels in and be stubborn and be foolish and put its head in the ground, I think that it is heading for a major car crash.
And what is the mood in Westminster on your side when you look at the Labour Party? Because it seems like it was only 6 or 7 months ago that they were ahead in the polls and talk of a general election, and now the view from here is that sometimes it seems they're in disarray. I mean, is the mood really...
The mood, well, obviously I will be in Parliament tonight, but I think the mood is very depressed on the Labour side because they're just thinking, I didn't go into politics to hit the working poor with a large tax bill. And also singling them out. It's not as if the last year's budget didn't put up taxes on everybody. It actually singled these people out. And I think that there's a major embarrassment for Labour about that. And I hope that those people who are considering rebelling will go ahead with that, because if actually we work together with the Labour rebels and other parties, we can stop this from happening. We can actually help people on relatively low pay who are otherwise going to be hit. So I think the mood at Westminster is going to be quite febrile for the whole of this week as we look forward to what will be a vote probably in a week's time.
We also have the local elections looming, and it seemed like you weren't willing earlier this week last week to be drawn on what would be a good result for the Conservatives. Can you not put a figure on it?
I never put figures on. If you look back over the last 3 years, I've never kind of forecast this many gains. All I say is that I want us to have, at the end of this, I want us to have more councillors, I want us to control more councils, I want us to get a better share of the vote. That is what, and anything, short of that, clearly I'll be disappointed with. But I don't set a number on it. There are plenty of pollsters and pundits who can do that. But I've been out on the streets of Bury and Salford. They're helping our candidates and councillors. They're in a very good spirit. They're in very good mood. In Bury, they're defending the record of a minority Conservative administration that's done very well, that's stuck to its promises, that's kept the council tax down. And I think they've got every right to turn to people in Bury and say, right now give us majority control of the council.
But can you be a real party of government if, for example, you have no seats in Manchester and perhaps Liverpool as well?
Well, obviously we've now got one.
If you don't win
we have
seats
one seat in Manchester.
at
I think
ballot
you've got to look across the whole of the northwest and look at Greater Manchester rather than just Manchester City, as it were. And the test for the Conservatives is: are we recovering? Are we growing? And if you look at Bolton, if you look at Bury, if you look at Salford, Salford, where I've just come from, it was 0 councillors. It's now 10. We now control 13 councils in the northwest compared to Labour's 8.
They're not in the cities. You're not winning in the city seats.
I want us to recover all over the country, including in the middle of cities. There's no reason we can't do that. If you go to Sunderland in the northeast, we have got inner city seats. If you look at Birmingham, we're in control of that city in Ireland. So we can do it. But I think it's only fair, if you're asking the question, can you, have the Tory party recovered in the northwest? Well, we are in control of 13 councils to Labour's 8.
I mean, is it just sometimes, in Manchester, for example, people look at the 80s and they saw a lot of decline and they think, I'm just not going to trust the Conservatives?
I think that I think there's the historical background, and I think our organisation in the centre of Manchester shrunk back, and it takes time to rebuild. And also in some places we were knocked out of second place, and so we have to clamber back up the ladder, and that does take time. But I think there are good signs because we're doing better in Greater Manchester. We've got obviously a toehold on Manchester City Council. We need to build on that.
And just finally, if I can ask about a campaign we've been running recently about bottled water. Given the fact that plastic bottles don't degrade quickly, given it can take thousands of years, given the fact that it's so expensive and we have a perfectly good alternative, shouldn't restaurants, for example, be offering people tap water as the first and perhaps only alternative?
Yes, I absolutely applaud this campaign. In my office, we've moved out of bottles and into jugs of tap water, and in central office, more broadly, we're doing that. And I think actually in restaurants, as a customer, I always ask for bottles. I always ask for tap water, because actually you sometimes feel you're being charged huge prices anyway for bottled water that you don't really want. And I think the whole move towards tap water, which is a very good quality now in this country, is an extremely good one. So I applaud the campaign. And it is so depressing to think of the enormous amount of water resources that go into making the bottle, and then you're paying all over again for the water in the bottle. It makes sense. Ask for the jug.
Graham Stringer, a Labour MP, it's not really a party political issue, but I know he was trying to get the House of Parliament to commit to doing something similar and to use tap water rather than bottled water. Would you be signed up to that as well?
Yeah, very good idea. I will definitely support that.